Animal Crossing. I love it. It's a game where I can be my true self away from the rest of the world, decorate a dream house I couldn't otherwise afford, and set up a communist dictatorship where all villagers are subject to my ruling. New Horizons has been my on and off game the past few months. It was a huge part of my life at the beginning of the pandemic, and as a result I just couldn't help but get attached to all the villagers and store owners. Yes, even Red. Still not forgiving him for selling me a fake painting. Stupid Red. Consequently, I ended up spending too much time looking into the characters and found the Japanese folklore behind them that I will now share with you. If you want blissful ignorance, I would suggest that you leave right now. But if you want to hear everything, then stay. Okay, so Cap'n, right? He's a pretty chill guy. In previous Animal Crossing games like Wild World, he would drive a taxi cab, or New Leaf, he would use a boat to take you to Tortimer Island. But his part in Japanese folklore, yeah, that comes from the legend of the Kappa. Basically, the Kappa are reptilian-like yokai, yokai being supernatural monsters or spirits in Japanese tradition. The Kappa specifically is found in water, wetlands, anywhere with water, similarly to Kappa, who can be found at all times on a boat in water. The real twist comes with the Kappa's main trait being their kidnapping of children and subsequent drowning of them in water. I know I'm looking way too deep into this, but being on a boat alone with Kappa in the middle of an ocean? Next up we have Tom Nook, Timmy, and Tommy. The next are supposed to represent the tanuki, which are actually real-life animals known as raccoon dogs commonly found across Asia and the rest of Japan. In Japanese folk culture, however, tanukis are present as an animal that can shapeshift for the purpose of tricking other people or animals. To shapeshift, I promise I'm not joking, they use their testicles as raincoats, bags set over their shoulders, and drums. Why? Just why? I'm never gonna look at Tom Nook the same way again, I'm sorry. One of the more interesting folklore aspects I found while researching this video was the appearance of Coco Gyroids as part of Japanese folk culture. While Coco looks unsettling, gyroids are a pretty large part of Animal Crossing, with them even being part of Isabelle's moveset in Smash Ultimate. Looking deeper into it though, gyroids are actually haniwa, an ancient clay figure commonly found on top of ancient Japanese tombs. Originally they were thought to have replaced human sacrifices, but more than likely they were used to keep spirits of the dead. Commonly though, they're used as art in the modern day, which I'm assuming is what Nintendo went off of. I hope. Otherwise I'd have a lot of explaining as to where Tortimer went, especially since you dig these out of the ground. And while we're on the subject of Japanese culture, Kabuki is one of the more obvious references in Animal Crossing to the culture. I mean, look, it's painted all over him. He embraces the Kabuki acting. Going even further into Japanese literature, we have Genji in the Animal Crossing, referencing the 11th century work of literature, The Tale of Genji, a son of an emperor who dropped out of the castle to pursue his love. While it's only loosely based, I still think it's really interesting that old Japanese literature has a part in the Animal Crossing game. But back to folklore, how about we take a look at Red? Besides scamming me, he's also Kitsune. Kitsunes are probably the most deep in terms of folklore, but to make a long story short, they trick people. Common Japanese folklore and myths describe stories of kitsunes taking advantage of wealthy merchants and travelers, and even turning into women to trick men. While Red doesn't go as far, it is interesting how he is able to stay so close to original folklore stereotype that was painted of foxes in Japan at that time. Well, folklore is great. There's actually a villager inspired by food in Animal Crossing that I wanted to bring up as the last one. Let's take a look at the snack villager, Zucker. Even his name has a snack sound, Zucker. Honestly sounds like something I would buy at Trader Joe's in the snack aisle. Zucker. Zucker is named after a traditional Japanese snack known as a tokoyaki, which are fried balls of dough filled with octopus. There isn't much else to say about him since he isn't exactly folklore, except whoever designed him nails the detail. He has freckles, which represent seasoning, and his hair is sauce. When I got so hungry for dessert, I went to a chain Japanese place in my town, and they actually sold the takoyaki, which I'm gonna give a 4 out of 5 because they were decent, but I've never had squid before, and I'm very scared that I'm gonna throw it up while I'm recording right now. That sums up most of the Japanese folklore and culture represented in Animal Crossing, and really just makes me appreciate how much work went into character cast and detail of Animal Crossing, even if there are some weirder connections. If you'd like to stick around, how about checking out my history of The Simpsons, or better yet, watching a video on the history of Animal Crossing. Until next time, have a great life.